Persia, the land we now call Iran, holds a legacy as vast and rich as its deserts and mountains. Long before the rise of Rome, it stood as a force to be reckoned with, shaping ideas, trade, and empire. Positioned at the crossroads of continents, Persia became a bridge between East and West, power and culture. Through wars and rebirths, it never vanished, only transformed. In this film, we uncover the roots of one of the world's most enduring civilizations. Our story begins not with mighty empires, but with the quiet dawn of civilization. Thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt in the rugged Zagros Mountains, the first Persian communities took root. Around 7,200 BC, villages like Choga Golan and Choga Bonut witnessed the cultivation of wild barley, lentils, and legumes, the seeds of a rich agricultural heritage. But the discovery of a 7,000-year-old wine jar, now at the University of Pennsylvania, hints at a culture far more sophisticated than mere subsistence farming. This burgeoning civilization wasn't isolated. Deep connections to Mesopotamia are evident. The great Sumerian city of Uruk extended its influence eastward, leading to the establishment of Susa, perhaps as early as 4,395 BC. Susa would become the capital of Elam, the first recognizable nation in what we now call Persia. For an astounding 5,500 years, until its final destruction by the Mongols, Susa thrived as a crucial economic and trade center. Elam, however, wasn't a modern nation-state. Imagine a confederation of mountain tribes, a dynamic mix of peoples. The Mesopotamians called them Elam, but they likely identified as something like Hultami, the people of the high country. This identity, people of the mountain, would become a defining trait of the Persian spirit, contrasting sharply with the people of the plain in the fertile Mesopotamian lowlands. These distinct groups were locked in a centuries-long dance of conflict and occasional dominance. The harsh Zagros Mountains weren't suited to the large-scale irrigation agriculture of the plains. Elamite life revolved around semi-nomadic pastoralism and small-scale farming in valley bottoms. This fostered a culture of resilience, creating a people perhaps fewer in number but tougher, more independent, and less reliant on the sophisticated agricultural systems of their lowland rivals. This inherent strength laid the foundation for the rise of Persia's enduring empires. Unraveling the mysteries of Elam, however, proves challenging. Their unique script, dating back to around 3,200 BC, remains largely undeciphered. This extinct language, unlike any other in the region, shrouds Elamite daily life in a veil of mystery. But recent breakthroughs in deciphering Elamite writing promise to shed light on this enigmatic civilization, potentially revealing a wealth of fascinating details. Despite the linguistic barriers, Elamite art offers compelling clues to their culture. A striking feature is the prominent role of animals, particularly dogs and bulls, in their artistic representations. This contrasts sharply with the Sumerians, Akkadians, and Egyptians, who favored human or human-animal hybrid figures. Elamite art suggests a polytheistic religion deeply connected to nature, centered around a mother goddess, with rituals performed in sacred groves and mountain sanctuaries. Remarkably tolerant, the Elamite religion readily incorporated deities from neighboring cultures into its pantheon, a testament to their openness and adaptability. This inclusivity left an enduring mark, influencing later Persian religions, such as Zoroastrianism, particularly in its emphasis on elevated places of worship and the personification of natural forces as deities. Another fascinating aspect of Elamite culture was the evident respect for women. Artistic depictions portray women as equals to men, with queens shown alongside kings, suggesting a more egalitarian society than many of its contemporaries. This remarkable respect for women would in many ways leave its mark on the later Persian societies. Elam's history is a tapestry woven with threads of conquest and commerce. Outnumbered by its more powerful lowland neighbors who benefited from sophisticated irrigation systems, Elam frequently found itself under siege. In fact, Elam holds the unfortunate distinction of being on the losing side of history's first recorded war, suffering invasion and looting at the hands of the Sumerians around 2700 BC. Later, under the legendary Sargon of Akkad, Susa, Elam's capital, would fall under Sumerian control. But Elam's story wasn't one of continuous subjugation. By 1100 BC, the tide had turned. King Shutruk-Nakhunte embarked on a series of stunning conquests, conquering numerous cities around Babylon, briefly establishing Elam as the dominant power in the region. However, internecine struggles between Shutruk's heirs proved its undoing. Babylonian King Nebuchadnezzar I seized this opportunity, conquering Elam in 1120 BC, highlighting the cyclical nature of power in this volatile region. Despite its fluctuating fortunes and regional power struggles, Elam maintained a robust global trade network. Excavations in Susa have unearthed artifacts from the Indus Valley Civilization in modern-day Pakistan, as well as objects from eastern Iran and Afghanistan. This evidence points to a dynamic exchange of goods by both land and sea routes. Afghanistan, a major source of tin, crucial for bronze production, was likely a key trading partner, with Elam potentially acting as an intermediary, supplying tin to Mesopotamia and even Egypt. Elam also exported stone, metal, and timber, commodities scarce in the arid plains of the Tigris-Euphrates. This ancient trade route would evolve into a precursor to the Silk Road, a vital artery connecting Europe and Asia, with Persia at its heart. However, Elam's dominance eventually waned with the arrival of Indo-Iranian peoples, nomadic groups originating from the Eurasian steppes who lived a lifestyle similar to later groups such as the Proto-Slavs, Turks, and Mongols. The arrival of Indo-Iranian peoples wasn't a sudden conquest. It was a gradual process of integration, particularly in southern Persia, spanning over a millennium, beginning around 2000 BC. Elamite culture, however, proved remarkably resilient, persisting long after the Indo-Iranians became the dominant group. For instance, the Elamite language continued to be used extensively in administration, suggesting that even under Iranian rule, the legal and administrative systems were largely staffed by native Elamites. This points to a sophisticated strategy of assimilation rather than outright replacement. Among the Indo-Iranian groups, the Medes emerged as a unifying force. Under Deioces, who reigned from approximately 727 to 675 BC, according to Herodotus, whose accounts, while detailed, should be treated with a degree of skepticism. Remember, he also gave us the tales of the 300 Spartans. The Medes began to consolidate power. Deioces' rule, while likely exaggerated in some historical accounts, was undoubtedly a significant step towards political unification. This unification was largely a response to the oppressive rule of the Assyrian Empire. Deioces' grandson, Cyaxares, forged crucial alliances with the Babylonians, culminating in the dramatic destruction of Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, in 612 BC. By 700 BC, various Iranian groups, including the Medes, Persians, and Parthians, had become the dominant population. The Medes, while instrumental in forging the first Iranian Empire and bringing down the Assyrians, would ultimately be surpassed by another group, setting the stage for the next chapter in Persia's epic history. The Medes may have laid the groundwork, but it was Cyrus the Great who forged the first true Persian Empire, the Achaemenid Empire, from the ashes of the Median Kingdom. Starting as a vassal of the Medes, Cyrus's rebellion in 553 BC ignited a chain of events that would reshape the ancient world. By 539 BC, Babylon, A city synonymous with power and opulence had fallen to his forces. He even ventured into India, conquering its western regions by 533 BC. The details of Cyrus's early life remain shrouded in mystery. How did a relatively unknown vassal manage to not only overthrow the Medes, but also unite the diverse Iranian tribes under his banner? Existing accounts, even those of Herodotus, are often intertwined with myth and legend, making it difficult to separate fact from fiction. One intriguing tale suggests a strategic alliance with a Median general, Harpagus, who was initially sent to subdue Cyrus but instead joined forces with him against the Median Empire. The exact nature of their pact remains unknown, but it's clear that Harpagus later rose to become one of Cyrus's most trusted generals. So, what elevated Cyrus to greatness? First, he united the disparate Iranian tribes into a remarkably stable and well-organized empire. His central administration, overseen by governors known as satraps, was renowned for its efficiency. Regular checks by a network of spies, known as the King's Eyes, ensured accountability and minimized corruption. The empire's 4 capitals reflected a degree of regional autonomy, but Susa, the ancient Elamite capital, served as the administrative center. It relied on a system of forward post offices where couriers could always find fresh food, water, bedding, and horses within a maximum of 2 days' travel. A system that subsequent empires copied for centuries. Its enduring impact is evident in the fact that Thomas Jefferson, drawing inspiration from Xenophon's Cyropedia, a biography of Cyrus, incorporated aspects of Cyrus's administrative system into the foundational documents of the United States. Secondly, Cyrus's conquest of Babylon in 539 BC and his subsequent decree allowing the exiled Israelites to return to their homeland are enshrined in the Hebrew Bible, portraying him as a divinely appointed liberator. This made Cyrus the only non-Jewish figure in the Bible celebrated as a Messiah-like figure. Thirdly, Cyrus was known for his remarkable tolerance. He respected the cultures and religions of the peoples he conquered. This policy is reflected in the titles bestowed upon him: Father by the Persians and Liberator by the Babylonians. Fourth, he established the elite Immortals, a 10,000-strong military unit that would remain a cornerstone of the Persian army for centuries. Cyrus the Great stands out among conquerors. He built the largest empire of his time with relatively little bloodshed, showing remarkable respect for civilian populations and local temples. Cyrus's son, Cambyses II, continued his father's expansionist policies, conquering Phoenicia and Cyprus in 525 BC, followed by the swift subjugation of Egypt, Nubia, and parts of modern-day Syria, all within the same year. To this day, the empire founded by Cyrus remains the largest of all successive Iranian empires, a testament to its incredible reach and enduring legacy. Cyrus's tomb, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, still stands in Iran as a poignant reminder of this remarkable era. And Persepolis, his magnificent capital city, continues to captivate archaeologists and visitors alike, revealing the opulence and sophistication of Achaemenid civilization. Next came Darius I, another pivotal figure in Persian history. Darius pushed the empire's boundaries even further, leading an expedition into the Indus Valley, modern-day Pakistan. However, he's perhaps best remembered for the first Persian invasion of Greece in 492 BC. This campaign, however, was marked by misfortune. A storm destroyed part of the Persian fleet, and the overall scale of the invasion was rather modest by Persian standards. The ensuing Battle of Marathon in 490 BC resulted in a stunning Greek victory, a significant setback for the Persian war machine. Darius, enraged by this unexpected defeat, planned a far larger invasion of Greece. However, death intervened in 486 BC, leaving the task to his son, Xerxes. Xerxes' leadership during the subsequent Greek campaign was, to put it mildly, less than stellar. By this time, the repeated Persian incursions had finally united the often fractious Greek city-states against a common enemy. Despite burning the city of Athens in 480 BC, Xerxes suffered a crippling naval defeat at the Battle of Salamis in the same year, forcing a hasty retreat back to Asia. Simultaneously, he faced a rebellion in Babylon, further complicating his situation. The remaining Persian forces in Greece were decisively defeated at the Battle of Plataea in 479 BC. Xerxes himself met a violent end in 465 BC, assassinated by his own royal bodyguard. The Greco-Persian Wars, though ending with a decisive Greek victory, didn't mark the end of conflict. For centuries to come, both empires continued to vie for influence over Anatolia and the Greek islands, with neither side achieving lasting dominance. Despite the setbacks in Greece, the Achaemenid Empire remained a dominant force for centuries. A remarkable aspect of its success was its commitment to improving the lives of its people, particularly in the challenging, semi-arid environment of Persia, which receives only a meager 124 millimeters of rainfall annually. One of the most impressive examples of this commitment is the Shushtar hydraulic system, masterminded by Darius the Great. This ingenious network of canals diverted water from a river to the city of Shushtar, powering watermills, creating a stunning man-made cascade, and irrigating nearly 100,000 acres of farmland and orchards. Another marvel, though predating the Persians, was significantly expanded under their rule: the qanats, subterranean canals that tapped into underground water tables, providing a reliable water source independent of rainfall. The ingenious design minimized evaporation and ensured resilience against damage from war or floods. Constructing qanats was a challenging feat of engineering, requiring precise sloping to ensure a steady water flow without causing collapses. Their unique landscape features, vertical shafts at regular intervals for access during construction and maintenance, stand as testaments to the ingenuity of Persian engineers. The yakchal, a dome-shaped clay structure used for storing ice during winter to keep food cool throughout the year, is another example of their practicality and resourcefulness. Furthermore, some scholars attribute the invention of the tar, a stringed instrument considered an ancestor of the modern guitar, to the Persians. Persia also gifted the world with backgammon, one of the oldest known board games, and claims to be the birthplace of chess, though this remains a subject of debate with India. Persian society, a vast tapestry of different regions and cultures, incorporated diverse customs and traditions. While slavery existed, particularly in areas like Babylon and Egypt, where it predated Persian rule, it appears to have been less pervasive than in contemporary societies like Greece or later Rome. Persian women enjoyed a remarkable level of freedom for their time, owning property, businesses, and money, and enjoying considerable freedom of movement. Aristocratic women even participated in activities like horseback riding and archery, pursuits generally restricted to men in other ancient societies. The only significant limitation on their roles seems to have been exclusion from political leadership. Finally, one of the most significant contributions of the Persian Empire was the emergence of Zoroastrianism, one of the world's earliest monotheistic religions, which profoundly impacted the region and beyond. Founded by Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, the exact time period of his life is shrouded in uncertainty. While religious tradition places him in the 6th century BC, some historians posit a much earlier date, possibly the 10th century BC, with his figure becoming mythologized over time. Zoroastrianism presents a compelling cosmology, portraying the universe as an arena of cosmic conflict between Ahura Mazda, the supreme god of good, and Angra Mainyu, the supreme god of evil. This duality is interwoven with core beliefs in free will, the afterlife, and a rich theology encompassing angels and demons, heaven and hell. Scholars of religion recognize its significant influence on Abrahamic religions, Buddhism, and even Greek philosophy. A striking example is the depiction of the three wise men in the Nativity story in the Bible. The term Magi refers to Zoroastrian priests, highlighting the religion's influence even on the very beginnings of Christianity. A unique aspect of Zoroastrianism is its portrayal of Ahura Mazda as omniscient but not omnipotent. This theological nuance, along with its emphasis on the protection and veneration of nature, likely drawing inspiration from earlier animistic and polytheistic beliefs, distinguishes it from other faiths. Fire played a central role in Zoroastrian rituals, frequently employed in prayers and ceremonies, often alongside flowing water. The concept of Asha, truth and righteousness, is seen by many as a guiding principle in Cyrus the Great's governance and lawmaking, though he didn't impose Zoroastrianism upon his conquered subjects. Zoroastrianism continues to be practiced today, albeit as a minority religion, in Iran and India. The Achaemenid Empire, while autocratic in its structure, demonstrated a remarkable degree of tolerance and a commitment to just governance. While rebellions were met with harsh consequences, the empire generally respected the customs, cultures, and religions of conquered peoples. Its administration, while centralized, aimed for efficiency and fairness, incorporating safeguards against corruption. This emphasis on improving the lives of ordinary citizens, coupled with the advancements in irrigation systems and women's rights, and the emergence of Zoroastrianism, showcases the intellectual and social progress fostered by this remarkable civilization. However, even this mighty empire would eventually fall, succumbing to the military genius of another great conqueror, Alexander the Great of Macedon. Alexander III of Macedon, better known as Alexander the Great, was deeply influenced by Cyrus the Great, devouring Xenophon's Cyropaedia from a young age. He particularly admired Cyrus's legendary heroism on the battlefield, a quality he would strive to emulate throughout his own remarkable career. Born in 356 BC, Alexander received an exceptional education, tutored by none other than Aristotle, the towering figure of Western philosophy. His precocious talent was evident early on. At just 16, he was commanding armies and governing in his father's absence. At 20, he ascended to the throne of Macedonia. His father, Philip II, had unified a vast territory under Macedonian rule. The Greek city-states, Illyria, the modern-day Balkans, and Thrace, modern-day Bulgaria and parts of northern Greece. However, Philip's reign ended abruptly in 336 BC, mirroring the fate of Xerxes the 100 centuries earlier, assassinated by a member of his own bodyguard. Alexander's early rule demonstrated a ruthless pragmatism. He swiftly dealt with potential rivals, ordering the execution of a cousin and 2 Macedonian princes. The extent of their involvement in Philip's assassination remains unclear. This decisive action effectively secured his position on the throne. Subsequent rebellions were crushed with brutal efficiency, most notably the utter destruction of Thebes in 335 BC. The city, 1,000 years old, was razed to the ground, its citizens sold into slavery, an act that sent a chilling message to any who might contemplate rebellion. Paradoxically, Alexander later showed generosity to any surviving Thebans he encountered, perhaps driven by genuine remorse or a shrewd attempt to quell dissent. His actions, however, successfully crushed any remaining rebellious sentiment within the Greek city-states, even in powerful Athens. Alexander followed in his father's footsteps, adopting the title of hegemon, or supreme commander of Greece, solidifying his dominance over the Greek world. These early years revealed Alexander's extraordinary military genius. He remained undefeated throughout his life, cementing his reputation as one of history's greatest military commanders. In 334 BC, Alexander the Great, at the head of a relatively small army, around 50,000 infantry, 6,000 cavalry, and a supporting fleet of 38,000, launched his audacious campaign against the vast Persian Empire. His initial victories in western Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, a region inhabited by Greeks living under Persian rule, provided crucial momentum. His subsequent advance into Syria and the Levant set the stage for a direct confrontation with the might of the Persian Empire. At the Battle of Issus in 333 BC, Alexander's outnumbered army faced a significantly larger Persian force led by Darius III. Darius's strategic error of engaging the Greeks in a narrow coastal plain, preventing the Persians from leveraging their superior numbers, proved catastrophic. Alexander's tactical brilliance and the reportedly cowardly retreat of Darius III at a critical moment triggered the collapse of the Persian army. This was an unprecedented event. The first time a Persian emperor had personally led an army to such a devastating defeat. The shockwaves of this defeat reverberated through the empire. Darius's flight left behind his family, wife, daughters, and mother, and symbols of his authority like his bow, chariot, and royal mantle. While Alexander treated Darius's female relatives with respect, he refused to release them until Darius formally acknowledged Alexander's claim to the Persian throne. Later, to cement his claim, Alexander would even marry one of Darius's daughters. Alexander's relentless campaign continued. The Phoenician city of Tyre, in modern-day Lebanon, resisted fiercely, leading to its brutal destruction in 332 BC, its male population slaughtered and women and children enslaved. Gaza, too, met a similar fate after inflicting a serious shoulder wound on Alexander during its defense. Following these crushing victories, Egypt fell relatively quickly under Macedonian control. Numerous cities named Alexandria were founded in the wake of Alexander's conquest, with Alexandria in Egypt, established in 331 BC, becoming a renowned center of learning and trade, famous for its lighthouse and the legendary Library of Alexandria. 2 years after Issus, at the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC, Darius once again faced Alexander, commanding a larger army and fighting on more favorable terrain. Despite having experienced soldiers and commanders, Darius's early flight once again sealed the fate of the battle, and indeed the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire, after this devastating defeat, would never truly recover. With Darius III unable to raise a third army after the devastating defeats at Issus and Gaugamela, the remaining Persian territories crumbled relatively quickly. The disastrous outcomes of the previous battles severely dampened volunteerism, making recruitment difficult. Alexander's strategic use of both carrot and stick, generosity towards surrendering cities, and brutal punishment of those who resisted, further accelerated the collapse. While Alexander's military genius and his masterful blend of diplomacy and ruthlessness undoubtedly played a significant role, Darius III's actions were equally pivotal. Alexander's military prowess shouldn't be underestimated. His skill in maintaining control over his own diverse and sometimes disloyal vassal states from the age of 16 is a testament to his leadership. But Darius's repeated cowardly retreats proved catastrophic. Not once, but twice, his flight single-handedly triggered the collapse of vastly superior Persian armies, undermining morale and shattering loyalty amongst the diverse troops under his command. This contrasts sharply with Alexander's own approach. He consistently rejected the safer advice of his generals, leading from the front and inspiring his troops with his courage. Both the Greek and Persian armies were composed of soldiers from numerous vassal states. not all fiercely loyal to their respective leaders. While the Greek soldiers fought for Alexander, driven by personal admiration for their fearless leader, the Persian soldiers saw Darius's repeated flights as a betrayal of their trust, and their lack of faith in their leader led many to desert or fight half-heartedly. The assertion that the Persian Empire was inherently weak and ripe for conquest is questionable. The fact that it managed to field armies twice the size of Alexander's on two separate occasions suggests considerable resilience and strength. There were no major internal rebellions or significant defections among local rulers to Alexander's side. The Achaemenid Empire remained a well-administered and functionally robust entity. Therefore, the fall of the Persian Empire might best be attributed to a highly improbable confluence of factors: the extraordinary military talent of Alexander the Great and the unprecedented incompetence of Darius III. This clash of two vastly different leaders, a once-in-a-millennium military genius against a remarkably ineffective emperor, resulted in the swift and unexpected collapse of one of history's greatest empires. Alexander's conquest of the Persian Empire resulted in the creation of the largest empire the world had ever seen, encompassing the territories of Greece, Macedon, and Persia. The culmination of his campaign witnessed the devastating sack of Persepolis in 330 BC, a fire, whether accidental or intentional, perhaps revenge for Xerxes' burning of the Acropolis in Athens, or simply a tragic accident, consumed much of the city. Though reportedly remorseful, Alexander couldn't prevent the destruction of this magnificent capital. The relationship between the Greeks and Persians was complex, marked by centuries of bitter rivalry and warfare, yet also by a grudging respect, a mutual acknowledgement of civilization that the Greeks didn't extend to many other cultures. Plutarch recounts Alexander pausing before a statue of Xerxes, pondering whether to leave it in ruin or restore it, highlighting the ambiguous nature of this historical relationship. Alexander's relentless ambition led him to pursue pretenders to the Persian throne across Central Asia, modern-day Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan. His insatiable desire for conquest ultimately led him to India in 326 BC. Initial victories were achieved, but this proved to be a step too far. His weary troops, longing to return home and reap the rewards of their conquests, openly revolted, refusing further expansion despite their continued loyalty to Alexander himself. By 324 BC, Alexander was back in Susa, the ancient Elamite city, focusing on consolidating his rule and integrating his diverse subjects. His efforts to establish legitimacy as a Persian emperor, incorporating Persian customs and traditions, created friction with his Greek troops. One infamous incident involved a drunken brawl and the death of a close friend, fueled by accusations that Alexander was adopting an Oriental lifestyle. He attempted to integrate Greek and Persian officers into a unified command structure and promoted mass marriages between his officers and Susa's noblewomen. But these efforts met with limited success. Upon returning to Babylon, he initiated administrative reforms, including the execution of corrupt or disloyal satraps. However, his reign ended abruptly in 323 BC at the relatively young age of 32. While a fever contracted near a swamp is the likely cause of his death. Suspicions of poisoning persisted, fueled by the political machinations surrounding his position and the numerous plots against him. The circumstances of Alexander's death remain shrouded in mystery, and there are many theories, but none are definitive. Some find a certain poetic irony in the fact that a man who conquered an empire and survived countless battles succumbed not to intrigue or violence, but to an ordinary illness. His body was initially interred in Alexandria, but the ultimate fate of his remains after the 2nd century AD is unknown. The ancient world was forever changed by the legacy of Alexander's conquests, His empire, lacking a designated successor, his famous deathbed declaration, "To the strongest," only fueled the ensuing power struggles, fragmented into 4 major successor states. This division marked the beginning of the Hellenistic period, roughly 323 to 31 BC, a time of significant cultural exchange and transformation. Though daily life for common people continued much the same, the elite underwent a significant transformation as Greek influences took root in their culture. The Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt, established by Ptolemy, exemplifies this process. They ruled until the Roman conquest, basing their power on Greek colonists while adapting to Egyptian traditions. Cleopatra, their last ruler and lover of Julius Caesar, marked the end of their dynasty in 30 BC. Hellenistic influence reached deep into the east, where the Greco-Bactrian kingdom arose in Central Asia, a lasting echo of Alexander's legacy, thriving far from its Greek homeland. In Persia, the Seleucid Empire, named after Seleucus, emerged as a major successor state. Locked in a prolonged rivalry with Ptolemaic Egypt, the Seleucids failed to maintain control beyond the Indus River, establishing a boundary with the Maurya Empire of India. Their westward expansion into Greece was thwarted by Greek and Roman forces, weakening the empire and paving the way for its conquest by the Parthians. Despite its eventual demise, the Seleucid Empire's most significant contribution is the Hellenization of the region. A continuous influx of Greek immigrants and the widespread adoption of the Greek language fundamentally altered the intellectual and cultural landscape. Greek became the language of learning, trade, and administration. The translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, the Septuagint, during this period underscores the profound impact of Hellenistic culture on the religious and intellectual world. In the Near East, particularly in Iran, Greek influence gradually waned after Alexander's death, replaced by a resurgence of Iranian and Zoroastrian traditions. The Greco-Bactrian kingdom in Central Asia proved to be a notable exception, maintaining a unique Hellenistic culture blended with Buddhism, a phenomenon known as Greco-Buddhism. This region served as a crucial conduit for the transmission of Buddhism to China. The Parthians, an Iranian nomadic group residing in modern-day Turkmenistan, mirrored the patterns of their Median and Persian predecessors. Initially governed by the Seleucids through Greek satraps, they revolted and established their own empire under Mithridates I the Great. His reign, approximately 171 to 138 BC, witnessed expansionist campaigns both eastwards toward the Greco-Bactrians and westwards into Greco-Roman territory. This pattern echoed a familiar motif in Persian history. A central authority rooted in present-day Iran, pushing its boundaries east into Central Asia and India, and west into the Levant and Anatolia. Strong leadership resulted in imperial growth. Weak leadership led to contraction. This cyclical pattern, the rise and fall of empires punctuated by nomadic invasions, continued, with the Medes, Persians, and now Parthians following a similar trajectory. Each nomadic group largely maintained pre-existing administrative structures and societal customs, primarily affecting the elite. The Parthian Empire was no exception. It is during this period that a full synthesis of Greek and Iranian culture would occur, and one good example of it is the cult of Mithra. Later on, Mithra would be a strong inspiration for the cult of Mithras by Roman legionaries. This cult would be competing with Christianity as a possible successor to the traditional Roman pagan gods. It was inspired by Mithra, but also incorporated a lot of other influences, including beliefs in astrology and divination. It was also a sort of secret society inside the Roman army, with multiple levels of initiation and secret hierarchy, a sort of martial Freemasonry. The Parthian Empire, unlike its predecessors, implemented a political system that deviated from the typical autocratic rule of previous Persian empires. While aristocratic in nature, power resided primarily within the nobility. It exhibited a remarkable degree of stability. The Parthian nobility possessed the authority to depose an ineffective king through a vote, a process that prevented the empire from descending into debilitating civil wars. Conversely, the king could demote or even arrest powerful nobles, provided such actions were perceived as just and fair. This balance of power contributed to Parthia's remarkable political stability, providing a considerable advantage over its often divided rivals, the Greeks and Romans, who were frequently embroiled in devastating civil conflicts. Parthia emerged as a significant rival to Rome, consistently thwarting Roman expansion eastwards. The Parthian mounted archers, representing a continuation of steppe military traditions, formed the backbone of their army. Their most renowned tactic was the Parthian shot, a devastating volley of arrows fired in retreat, catching pursuing enemy cavalry off guard. This tactic played a crucial role in a landmark victory: the defeat and death of Crassus, a prominent member of the Roman triumvirate, in 53 BC. Legend has it that Crassus, known for his avarice, was killed by having molten gold poured down his throat as a symbolic punishment for his greed. The Sassanian Empire represented the last pre-Islamic chapter of Persian imperial rule. To grasp its emergence, we must explore the roots and beliefs of those who built it. The Sasanians hailed from an ancient Persian noble family, tracing their lineage back to the same region as Cyrus the Great. Established in 224 AD, their empire re-established Iranian culture and Zoroastrianism as the state religion. While elements of Hellenistic culture persisted, its influence was significantly less pronounced in Iran than in the empire's western reaches, such as Lebanon and Israel. Religious tolerance, however, was a hallmark of this empire, distinguishing it from the increasingly Christian Roman Empire. The Sasanians would become the most formidable and enduring rivals to the Eastern Roman Byzantine Empire. The Sassanian Empire, 224 to 651 AD, witnessed significant cultural and intellectual flourishing. It provided a haven for Jewish scholarship, as evidenced by the compilation of the Babylonian Talmud within its borders. The rise of Manichaeism, a syncretic religion incorporating elements of Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Buddhism, presented a significant religious challenge, attracting followers despite facing suppression by the Sasanian authorities. Ultimately, however, Manichaeism was eradicated by various governments across the West, China, and the Caliphates by the 14th century, though it left its mark on certain Gnostic Christian sects like the Cathars. Compared to the more nomadic Parthian culture, the Sasanians fostered a more centralized and urbanized society. Their influence extended eastward, significantly expanding trade along the Silk Road. This ancient trade route, which owes its name to the Chinese invention of silk in the 4th millennium BC, flourished under Sasanian rule. The Sasanians engaged in cultural exchange with China, exchanging artists, musicians, and dancers, and cooperating to defend the Silk Road from nomadic raiders. They also gained control of Indian Ocean trade, displacing the Romans. The Sasanian era is widely considered a high point of classical Persian civilization. Sasanian achievements in architecture, literature, philosophy, and engineering left a lasting mark. So much so that, after the Islamic conquests, many of these contributions were absorbed into the broader Muslim world and later identified as Islamic by outsiders. A fascinating discovery, the so-called Baghdad Battery, a vessel containing metal components capable of generating electricity, has sparked speculation that the Sasanians may have even invented the first electric battery, though its precise purpose remains unknown. By the time of Muhammad's preaching and the unification of the Arab tribes, the Sasanians and Byzantines were locked in a prolonged and debilitating war. The plague of Justinian, also known as the Plague of Shiro in the 6th century, dealt a devastating blow, further weakened by incursions from Turkish tribes. The empire's military capabilities were significantly reduced by the strains of protracted warfare, culminating in the assassination of King Khosrow II in 628 AD. The resulting power vacuum triggered a brutal civil war, with numerous claimants vying for the throne, ultimately leaving the Sassanian Empire profoundly weakened and vulnerable to the rising power of the expanding Islamic caliphates. The civil war lasted 4 to 5 years, from 628 to 632 AD. Hardly had the civil war concluded when the Arab Muslim armies launched their initial invasion of Mesopotamia. While this initial attack was repelled, a second invasion in 636 AD resulted in the loss of all Sasanian territories west of modern-day Iran. A third wave of attacks, beginning in 642 AD, led to the complete collapse of the empire within a decade. Despite significant Persian resistance, including attacks on Arab garrisons, the Arab armies, reinforced from the Arabian Peninsula, ultimately prevailed. The conquerors destroyed Zoroastrian sacred texts and forcibly converted much of the population to Islam. Many Zoroastrians fled, contributing to the establishment of Zoroastrian communities in India and elsewhere in Asia. Non-Muslims were subjected to the jizya tax and faced the risk of enslavement. However, Islam's dominance in Iran was not immediate. It took several centuries for it to become the predominant religion. The Islamic conquest of Persia mirrored concurrent campaigns against the Byzantine Empire, leading to the formation of the Rashidun Caliphate. Spanning across the Middle East, this powerful empire held dominion over Iran, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Syria, and regions of Central Asia. The relationship between Persia and Islam is complex and multifaceted. While Islam was imposed upon the Persian population, who resisted widespread conversion for centuries, Persian culture profoundly influenced the development of Islam, especially in its Asian expansion. The influence of Persian culture is readily apparent in the cultures of the Turkic peoples who built the vast Ottoman Empire. While Islam transformed Persia, it didn't obliterate the unique characteristics of Persian civilization, similar to how previous invasions, by the Medes, Greeks, and Parthians, had failed to entirely eradicate Persian culture. The Umayyad Caliphate, which succeeded the Rashidun Caliphate, incorporated significant elements of Persian culture. While initially an Arab empire, it drew heavily upon the manpower and resources of Persia and Mesopotamia, adopting Persian administrative practices and court protocols. At its zenith around 750 AD, the Umayyad Caliphate stretched from Central Asia to the Pyrenees Mountains in modern-day Spain. However, this vast empire proved unsustainable and eventually fragmented into smaller, more manageable entities. The succession crisis following Muhammad's death led to a significant schism within Islam, dividing the community into Sunni and Shia branches. Sunnis accepted Abu Bakr's leadership, while Shia Muslims believed Ali, Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, was the rightful successor. This division, initially focused on political leadership, evolved into deeper theological and cultural differences that persist to this day. Shia Islam initially held sway in Egypt and North Africa, while modern-day Iran is now considered the center of Shia Islam, often finding itself in opposition to the predominantly Sunni Muslim world. The Umayyad Caliphate gave way to the Abbasid Caliphate, established with the assistance of a Persian general. The Abbasids significantly integrated Persian culture and administration into their rule. In 762 AD, they founded Baghdad near the site of ancient Babylon, transforming it into a leading center of learning and trade within the Muslim world. Baghdad's renowned House of Wisdom played a crucial role in preserving and translating ancient Greek, Roman, and Persian texts, along with advancements from China. The city also housed the world's first paper mill, showcasing the adoption of Chinese technology. The Abbasids facilitated the exchange of knowledge with other global civilizations, contributing to the transmission of inventions such as the sextant, the number zero, and gunpowder to the West. Despite its early success, the Abbasid Caliphate faced immense challenges maintaining control over its vast territories. By the 9th and 10th centuries, it lost control over Morocco, Egypt, and North Africa. From 945 AD to the 13th century, the Seljuk Turks, originating from the Eurasian steppes, gained control of the region. This followed a recurring pattern in Iranian history, a nomadic group supplanting a weakened dynasty. Although the Abbasids remained nominally in power, the Seljuks held real authority over the military and state, while Iranians managed the administration. The Abbasid Caliphate is widely recognized as the engine driving the Islamic Golden Age. Building on the intellectual legacy of ancient Egypt, Persia, Greece, and Rome, and fostering cultural exchange across Eurasia, it witnessed significant advancements in various fields, including medicine, philosophy, astronomy, chemistry, geometry, physics, especially optics, and mathematics, particularly algebra and calculus. Scholars from diverse religious backgrounds, including Zoroastrians, Christians, and Jews, contributed significantly to this intellectual flourishing. The Abbasids also fostered the creation of celebrated works of literature, such as 1001 Nights, initially a translation of Persian texts with origins in Indian folklore, expanded with Arabic, Persian, Mesopotamian, and Egyptian tales, giving rise to iconic characters such as Aladdin, Sinbad, and Ali Baba. The Seljuk rule, while impactful, didn't fundamentally disrupt the daily functioning of the Abbasid Caliphate. However, the Mongol invasions marked a stark departure from previous nomadic incursions, distinguished by their unprecedented scale and brutality. The Mongols systematically pillaged and destroyed vast swaths of territory, culminating in the catastrophic sack of Baghdad in 1258. The destruction of Baghdad, a center of learning and culture, is widely considered the end of the Islamic Golden Age. Numerous cities met similar fates, their populations massacred and their libraries and mosques razed. The Mongols also systematically targeted khanats, the vital irrigation systems that sustained much of the region. The destruction of these crucial infrastructure elements led to widespread desertification and rendered many agricultural areas and urban centers uninhabitable. Under the Mongol Ilkhanate, Persia experienced a degree of recovery. Trade routes were gradually restored, and some irrigation infrastructure was repaired. Significantly, a large segment of the Mongol population converted to Islam, often showing a preference for Sufism, a mystical branch of Islam that resonated with their existing animistic or Buddhist beliefs. Just as Persia began to recover, two devastating events struck: the Black Death, reaching Iran in 1349 and decimating approximately 30% of the population, and the invasion of Timur, Tamerlane, in 1381. Timur, the last great nomadic conqueror, stands as one of history's most brutal rulers. His signature tactic involved demanding unconditional surrender. Refusal resulted in the slaughter or enslavement of entire populations, irrespective of age or gender. His campaigns are estimated to have resulted in the deaths of up to 17 million people, a staggering 5% of the world's population at the time. Many contemporaries viewed him as a harbinger of the apocalypse. Paradoxically, despite his genocidal policies, Timur was a significant patron of the arts, particularly architecture and poetry. Built on murder and violence, the Timurid Empire would fail less than a century after Timur's conquests. Following the Timurid period, Persia experienced a succession of nomadic rulers, including the Black Sheep Turkmen, Kara Koyunlu, and the White Sheep Turkmen, Ak Koyunlu. The Mongol invasions brought enduring fractures to Persia, perhaps for the first time in thousands of years, even reaching its heartlands. This political disunity opened the door for powerful religious movements aiming to re-establish order and reunite the region. Shia Islam gained significant traction during this period, eventually becoming the dominant faith in Iran. Shah Ismail, a leader of mixed Turkoman, Kurdish, Greek, and Georgian ancestry, emerged as a unifying figure. His diverse heritage reflected the multicultural nature of Persia, making him an apt leader for a land shaped by centuries of assimilation and conquest. Ismail's Safavid Dynasty integrated various Sufi orders into Shia Islam, solidifying a distinctive Iranian Shi'ism that contrasted significantly with the Sunni Islam prevalent in the Arab world. Between 1501 and 1511, Shah Ismail reconstituted a Persian empire with familiar boundaries, encompassing Iran, the Caucasus, parts of Turkmenistan and Afghanistan, and exerting some control over Mesopotamia. The Safavid Empire's primary rival was the powerful Ottoman Empire to its west. While Persia had been ravaged by Timur and other nomadic groups, the Ottomans had established a vast empire in Anatolia, culminating in the conquest of Constantinople, a centuries-long aspiration of Muslim rulers. The Ottomans controlled the Balkans, Greece, the Levant, Egypt, and at their peak, extended into North Africa and Ukraine, even twice besieging Vienna. The Safavid, Ottoman, and Mughal empires are often categorized as the gunpowder empires. Their rise and expansion were intimately tied to their early adoption and mastery of gunpowder technology, forming stable, wealthy, innovative, and expansionist empires that profoundly shaped the political landscape of Eurasia. The Safavid Empire, while exhibiting elements of hereditary rule, also incorporated meritocratic principles. While positions could be inherited, individuals needed to demonstrate competence to retain their authority. The Safavids maintained relatively amicable relations with the Mughal Empire to the east, geographically separated by the formidable mountains of Afghanistan and Pakistan. In contrast, the Safavids engaged in persistent conflict with the Ottoman Empire over Mesopotamia, the Caucasus, and eastern Anatolia. This rivalry with the Ottomans led to strategic alliances with European powers. Under Shah Abbas the Great, the Safavids forged trade relationships with the Dutch East India Company and even formed an alliance with the Habsburg monarchy of Austria. Abbas Uri's military reforms, modeled on the British Army under the guidance of Sir Robert Shirley, enabled him to recapture Baghdad, eastern Anatolia, and Georgia by 1618. His alliance with England facilitated the expulsion of the Portuguese from Bahrain and Hormuz, with the assistance of the British Royal Navy. Europe also imported valuable Persian goods, such as carpets, silk, and other textiles. The standard of living for ordinary people in the Safavid Empire was comparable to that of their European contemporaries. However, European visitors noted underutilized fertile lands, attributing this to poor governance and a lack of interest in agriculture among the ruling elite. The Safavid era saw the construction of numerous enduring monuments in Iran, including the magnificent mosques of Isfahan, a city that also served as a center of learning. By the mid-17th century, however, intellectual stagnation began to set in. A reverence for established knowledge hindered innovation and the willingness to challenge existing assumptions, placing Persia at a disadvantage compared to the increasingly scientifically driven societies of Europe. The successors of Abbasid proved less capable rulers, more focused on pleasure than governance, creating opportunities for ambitious neighboring powers. Russia, which had been expanding eastward and southward for centuries, emerged as a significant threat to the Safavid Empire's long-term stability. Peter the Great's Russia seized Iranian territories in the Caucasus in 1723, while Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan also rebelled. The Ottomans also capitalized on the situation, carving out a portion of Iranian territory. The Treaty of Constantinople, 1724, temporarily partitioned Iranian lands between Russia and the Ottomans. However, a rebellion and subsequent war between Iran and the Ottomans resulted in the return of most of these lost territories by 1735. Nader Shah, the leader of this rebellion, went on to launch a devastating campaign into India, plundering Delhi and using the spoils to finance the reconquest of lands lost to the Ottomans. While initially a successful military leader, Nader Shah's reign was ultimately marred by paranoia and cruelty. His assassination in 1747 left Persia in a state of chaos and civil war. Agha Muhammad Khan, the eventual victor of the ensuing conflicts, established the Qajar dynasty in 1796. His reign focused on restoring Iranian control over the Caucasus. However, Iran, like many other nations, found itself struggling against the growing power and expansionism of the industrialized European colonial empires. Despite fighting a major war against Napoleon, Russia decisively defeated Iran in two Russo-Persian Wars, 1804 to 1813 and 1826 to 1828, permanently losing the Caucasus region. The imposition of Russian Orthodox rule prompted many Caucasian Muslims to flee to Iran, seeking refuge from foreign domination. Later on, the ruling elite would essentially sell the country to foreign power influence, especially bidding Russia and England against each other. Britain, as the colonial power in India, increasingly clashed with Russia over control of Central Asia and Persia. A series of revolutions between 1905 and 1911 weakened the Shah's authority and fueled demands for greater democracy. This period saw the transition from aristocratic Persia to a modern state, but it also left Iran vulnerable to foreign manipulation. The 1907 Anglo-Russian Convention formally divided Iran into spheres of influence, disregarding the Iranian people's wishes and highlighting the country's loss of autonomy. Foreign powers actively supported competing factions vying for control. The discovery of oil in 1908 exacerbated corruption, failing to generate meaningful economic development. By 1921, Britain and the Soviet Union were vying for dominance over Iran and its strategically vital oil reserves. For the Soviets, access to the Indian Ocean and the ability to threaten British colonies in the Middle East and India held significant strategic value. With British backing, Reza Khan seized power, establishing the Pahlavi dynasty, which ruled until the 1979 revolution. Reza Shah Pahlavi's regime was authoritarian, nationalistic, and militaristic, espousing secularism and staunch anti-communism. Under his rule, Iran underwent rapid modernization. However, the authoritarian nature of the regime fostered corruption and oppression. The Shah's secular policies clashed with the deeply religious sentiments of the largely Muslim population. His attempts at westernization, including changes in clothing styles, women's liberation, and socioeconomic reforms, also met with considerable resistance. During World War II, the Iranian government was initially tempted to side with the Germans. This prompted a joint Anglo-Soviet invasion, securing a vital supply route for the Lend-Lease program, delivering American military equipment to the Soviet Union. The post-war period was marked by instability due to unresolved issues with Western powers. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the new Shah, initially attempted to steer Iran toward a constitutional monarchy similar to Britain or Spain. However, his relationship with the democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh deteriorated, following Mossadegh's nationalization of the British-controlled oil industry. Mossadegh was briefly removed from power in 1951, only to be reinstated due to popular pressure. A US and UK-sponsored coup finally ousted him in 1953. From 1953 to 1973, Western companies controlled Iran's oil resources. In 1973, during the oil crisis, the Shah regained control, using the oil revenues for modernization and military expansion. The 1979 Iranian Revolution led to the establishment of the Islamic Republic. Communist elements who had initially supported the revolution were swiftly purged, resulting in strained relations with the Soviet Union. Iran severed ties with the West, and the Iran hostage crisis became a defining event. Saddam Hussein's Iraq, seeking to exploit Iran's internal turmoil, launched a war in 1980, aiming to seize Iran's oil-rich territories. Iraq received considerable support from the US, USSR, France, UK, Egypt, and Arab nations. Today, Iran remains under Western sanctions tied to its nuclear ambitions. Yet, it continues to project power across historically Persian-influenced regions like Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and even Yemen. Strengthening ties with China and Russia, Iran has joined major international alliances such as BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The Persian Empire's legacy still resonates. Iran stands among the most resilient and impactful civilizations in history. For thousands of years, the Persian people have left an enduring mark on global culture, science, and innovation.